All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining me today. And today we're going to be looking at Lesson 10. So the final design, the last assignment in the course, and all that content and knowledge that you've gone through over the last 18 weeks is all dialing into your final design. So we're going to take a look at the various parts of the assignment and some examples, and then answer any questions to make sure everybody is fully understanding what is being asked of them. So we are taking a look at lesson 10 here. Sorry, I've forgot to do one thing on my Zoom preferences. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so let's take a look at lesson 10. Fortunately, it's just two parts, and I think the first part's extremely straightforward. Get my little highlight tool here. So it's just a local network survey, and we're looking, we're asking you to take a look at any permaculture transition towns, like-minded group in your area. So that's an important thing to do, especially when you get through a permaculture design course. You're all fired up, hopefully, and and wanting to perhaps interact with other like-minded folks. So it is important to find other people around you. That's been my experience anyways. And of course, sharing not only knowledge, but just what everybody is doing. It's one of the key ways I've learned over the years is just observing what other people's work has been. And it's a great way of seeing new ideas and how others approach some of the challenges that we come across. So the local network survey, of course, is, again, it's pretty straightforward. I can bring up an example here of the student examples, and it's, really a 1 or 2 page sheet here. And we're just asking designers, farmers, illustrators, other categories, some instructors, and listing those. So again, pretty straightforward. And then there's that Q&A page if you have any questions or feedback. Let's see here. We'll go back to lesson. Now, I don't think there are any resources here when we're looking at. No, there's not not any resources related to that part of the assignment, but the main item, of course, and that is really indicated with the amount of points that are being allocated for the concept plan. That is the big event, and that is where we basically pull all of this past information and some of the exercises that you've gone through and pull it all into one place. And again, I'm going to show you some examples of that. But a few basic things that we want to include here are your existing plan, and we could also call that your base plan. So that's the pre-design state of your site. And then we are going to look at the concept itself. So your final drawing showing those various layers. Well, that's what I would call them, various layers that you've gone through. So you've looked at water, you've looked at soil, you've also looked at planting, and those are all going to overlap and drop into this overall concept. So with that, we're looking for a mission statement. So, why are you doing the design? Yeah, that's a fairly important thing to list. Again, it's the big picture, and that's one thing that I was going to point out as I'm showing you some examples today, is that concepts are the big picture. We're not really looking for fine details. If you felt you wanted to include any level of detail, please do. But, honestly, a lot of people just don't have the time to do so because there's a lot involved with assembling the concept plan itself. So again, we're looking for a mission statement and sort of a goal list with the design. We're looking at your proposed zones. So we had you go through an existing zone map early in the course. So we want to see if that has changed at all. And a pathway map. Then we're looking at water. So how is water behaving on your site, and what are your plans to manage that? So that is pretty straightforward. That was in lesson 5. And then we're looking at soil and soil fertility and how that is going to be maintained within the design, as well as a phase plan and budget. And these are important elements to add into a design if you're doing this for a client. Not necessarily adding these right at this point, but getting a bit of a handle on how a project could be installed in phases. And that is more often than not, the way our projects have been installed is in different phases. So there is often a logical approach to that. And a budget is very important, and that gets a bit tricky with clients because a lot of people just don't have a firm grasp on what costs are going to be. But hopefully this has really been considered before the design began, because if it hasn't been, you can get yourself into a bit of uncomfortable spot. And early on in our career, that certainly did happen when we decided to design the Taj Mahal and the budget wasn't there for it. So when that did happen to us, we basically had to go back to the drawing board on our dollar and adapt it to that budget. So this is a really important piece. You want to demonstrate 5 principles that are within your drawing, and a little bit about social permaculture in your area, how it's going to improve social and cultural conditions, and then of course your SWOT analysis. So there is a list here of all the elements. And maybe what we'll do is take a look at a couple of examples, and then I'll show you some examples of what my wife and myself's company has done. So here, again, is one student's work. And this, we start out here. So this might be a little bit different. And when I say that, the template has changed slightly since it first began. So if we take this first page and actually we look at the template file, we can see that the first page we want is your existing plan. So basically that's the base plan. So we want to see, and that's really helpful that would be really helpful for a client, but it's very helpful for anybody looking at your drawing so they don't have to scroll back 130 slides to see, the base plan itself. And then the next we're looking at is the actual concept plan. And that is what we've got here. So we've got a nice base plan that's been grayed out. And I do like what the student has done. So they've sort of minimized the base plan by applying, by graying it, and then all the new elements are colored. And then we've got some labels here, as well as a legend. Now the legend really pertains to the base plan, and these labels are for the newer elements that this person wants to add to their drawing or add to their design. So that's a really nice presentation. And yeah, if that's the sort of thing you focus on, that makes it super easy for anybody to look and see what your intention is, rather than, I'm sure you can imagine, if all of this was colorized, you'd have to then decipher what's new and what's existing. So if we go to the design goals and proposed zones, we see that that's been well put together. And this did change slightly from the students' existing zones. Not a lot, but a little bit. Let's see, so we have zone 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and they do indeed have a zone 5. That is an untouched forested area. So we have a mission statement here, very clear what the whole reasoning is behind the design itself, and then we have a variety of goals. And this is a nice little addition where the student has placed in, regarding the zones, any of the changes that were included here. So zone 5 didn't change, but all these other ones did slightly. And the images of each one are again, a nice touch. They kind of add to the visual element. And then we get into this water management plan. Now, I'm not sure why this person has it on a separate sheet. If you can add it here, that I would say is ideal. And then if you have to kind of zoom in on anything, you can certainly do so on an additional sheet. But if you can, I would try and include as much information on one sheet as possible without it looking, too busy. Again, just some points on their water management plan. And there's a bit of a level gate for the rain garden. I haven't really gone through this, so I can't really comment on that. But being able to control the flow of water going into a rain garden is a great idea, and that's often what we do. And it's very simple to do with what's called a sliding gate valve. So during November and December, when we're being inundated with rainfall, we'll often have it bypass a rain garden. You don't have to, but if it's going to be extremely wet, that's one thing to do, is just to bypass it and then re-engage that when you're into getting closer to the growing season. So this person has laid out what they want to do with their water management plan, a little bit of text here, description. They have some contours, which is wonderful. It's always nice to include contours if you can. And if you're doing so, identifying a couple of them will give the viewer a good idea of the actual slope. So yeah, this is a very well put together design sheet. And then we get into soil fertility. Next slide. It doesn't appear that it is in the next slide, so I'm not sure what happened there. But there basically should be a scaled down version of this that focuses on the soil fertility, where perhaps where some of the composting is going to be taking place, or some students I've seen will identify sections of their soft landscape and say, well, say this area is compacted. We're going to relieve the compaction with a broad fork and add organic matter to this space. So they'll describe these various spaces and what their plans are. And believe it or not, this is a pretty big component, in that this not only the water, but soil really does drive the landscape. So your soil biology and the life you have within that is going to have a direct impact on the on fertility. And you need those soil organisms to provide soil available nutrients, or sorry, plant available nutrients. Yeah, so this is a biggie, and I've been very fortunate in my career. When I started way back, this was really impressed on me, so it's kind of stuck with me for my career up to now. Let's see here. We are into the concept plan phasing. So yeah, this is one way to put the phasing together, kind of like a little spreadsheet. This goes for 4 years, and we're looking at the action. So this person wants to put in a swale and a berm in zone 1. And just so you know, these letters up here are seasons. So winter, summer, or spring, summer, and fall. So if you didn't know what they were, that's what they're all about. So we would just want to know what time of year you're planning to do this work, and roughly the cost and the number of hours. So it's just a good exercise to go through. And even today, when we bid installation work, you continually are doing this kind of thing. If you become, if you're designing and installing landscapes for others, so it is a good exercise to get used to. And it's always a guess, so there's no real right or wrong here. If there's something that kind of jumps out as being maybe incorrect in terms, from my perspective, in terms of the phasing, I'll certainly mention that, but this is all good. I typically, when we do a project, we will really focus on the infrastructure first. So that water and earthworks, and get the site prepared, and then start looking at soil, irrigation, and for us, the vegetation is the last deal, that and mulching, and then we're a done deal. So that pretty much covers this part of the assignment. And then there's, of course, your permaculture principles and a little bit about social permaculture, and you can drop in some images there if you wish. Yeah, and then that's it. That is the end of that lesson 10, or so I guess it's really assignment 21, with your final design. So do either one of you have any questions about what we've gone through? And if not, I'll carry on and I can show you some examples.
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm working on a pretty small urban lot,
Yeah.
and the owner doesn't want to do any like water conservation things, like
Mm-hmm.
the rain barrels or anything.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, do I need everything to be on separate pages like this, or could like the water management and the soil fertility be on the same page because there's not like a ton of things happening?
Right. Well, in some ways, Abner, I would almost, um, I would, for this exercise, and you can, of course, do it whatever you want to do. It's up to you. But for this exercise, I would almost consider creating an initial plan, something that you would present to your client. And even though they're given the thumbs down on some of these ideas you might have, I would consider documenting it in your design as, okay, in a perfect world, this is what we would do. And if they give you feedback that says, well, no, we don't want to do that, well, fair enough. And what we often do is we'll have an initial concept that we show people, and then we will wait for feedback. And then once we have that feedback, we'll edit the drawing to accommodate, whatever it is they would like to change. And then that's our sort of final concept. And then that's what we can put details on. So that would be my suggestion, just to go through that exercise, because, the water portion of any design is huge, and it really drives the landscape. And even a simple thing like rain barrels or rain gardens, or they have such a profound effect that that's what I would suggest. I hope that helps you out. But if I wouldn't try and squeeze it all on one page if you're doing that, I would separate it.
Okay, because in the last, so like all along you've been saying like with the SWATs, and I've been putting like there's a lot of opportunity for rainwater harvest, and you have in your feedback said like that's a good idea, and but the owner just repeatedly like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with compost. Like, and so I'm like, well, that would be like kind of what this class is about, but then the owner
Yes.
doesn't want it.
Yes, I hear you. And I think you could actually take this, like this is our class and it's an example that you are working on, right? But so the takeaway might be when before you engage to do any work with somebody is you really get a good feel for what they're trying to achieve in their landscape. And for us, it's a little bit of it's that plus a little bit of education, and we tell people our process. So our process a little bit different than the class. So we go through a water layer, we go through an access layer, and then we go through a soil layer. And these are all to make improvements to their existing landscape. And if somebody then says, well, you know what, I just want it to look a little better and I don't care about this stuff. Well, that's great. We're not a good fit for you, right? That's kind of how we would approach it. I have no interest in just putting together ornamental landscapes that have no ecological benefit. That's my personal choice. So and certainly no fault to you, but this is a bit of a learning experience. You can see how clients, um, in a lot of ways you have to, I won't say manage, but you just need, before a design starts, it's really good to know that there are some common threads there. That yes, you're interested in rainwater at some level. You're interested in these resources that are hitting your site and you want to slow them down and have an ecological benefit to your property. So saying that, so that would be an important takeaway. Um, so for your benefit, I would design it how you see it. And at this point, just kind of ignore that feedback. Now, if this was a project you were doing for somebody, well, no, you don't ignore their feedback at all. You may find at this stage, oops, I found this out, and now I got to complete without doing what I want to do. So you just have to kind of manage that last little bit of the job. But yeah, having that kind of open conversation with folks early. Um, we've learned over time that that gets greater and greater. We have people fill in a questionnaire. We have what we call a good fit call, where we talk to them on the phone for 15, 20, 30 minutes, depending on the size of the job, and make sure there's some common interest. They're interested in making improvements to their property, that they have a little bit of an idea of budget. We talk about design fees because that's kind of where we're at the early point where you're going to pay for a design. These are sort of very rough numbers that we throw out, then just to see the reaction. And if something doesn't work for them or for us, well, we haven't invested too much time in it. And it doesn't often happen because we tend to get people that are I guess they see our website and they go, okay, this is what I want to do, and that's great. But it has happened. We have had, way back before we were probably 20 years ago, I would just go and do my own thing, right? I had a vision and a style, and there's maybe 1 out of 20 people would look at the planting afterwards and think, I don't really like that. I don't like a full garden. I don't like all this foliage. And that, you can go back to those initial meetings and think, wow, we needed to get our vision across a little bit better and make sure that, hey, if you like this is what we're going to try and do. And so that's the trickiest part. Going in and working on some property is relatively easy. It's making sure you're doing it in the best interest of your client. But again, in this situation, I would put into your drawing what you feel is, what you would do if it was yours, right? So,
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
yeah, no problem. All right, Jennifer, do you have any questions at all at this part, or you don't have to, for sure?
No,
Yeah.
I thought we were going to have to do a lot more schematic details, so I am a little bit relieved to hear it's more overarching concepts. It's going to be a lot less slides.
Okay. Yeah, this well, I tell you what, let us take a look at a couple of examples here. I will show you a few things that we there we go. Okay. So here's a couple examples. This is one that we did for an urban garden that these people are going to put in themselves. And I won't bore you with all the different layers, but this is how we assemble. This is our final design. And we do that sector analysis. This is our water layer. It's a very simple water layer, but we're looking at roof surface, what we can collect off the roof, send into a rain garden, put in a little swale trail up at the top here to slow water flows down. We have contours here, but you'll see I haven't labeled them. So there's going to be all kinds of little things that you go, haha. So that's very basic. But this, as you'll see, and we have some liquid tote containers here to collect rainwater off of a covered outdoor entertainment area. And then we go to access. So this is a very simple sheet. And this is where we put in all that hardscape, all the hard elements. So we have a little retaining wall, a little retaining wall, a new walkway, and we have a patio out in the lawn area here with a fire pit and then a covered cooking area. So that's just, again, access. And then we get to the soil layer. So that is all that soft living landscape that goes over top of the previous layers. And this is, just some fruit trees, and there's existing plants here. And they wanted a perimeter screen, and they wanted to be able to grow their own annual veg. So we have a bunch of 30-inch beds set up here. And they have a tiny little rain garden. It's almost too tiny, but this all comes together. This is the concept. So if I was doing the exercise, submitting, this is the sheet I would be submitting. And it's just the big picture. We're just wanting to know what are these elements. So this is annual vegetable garden. This is rainwater harvesting cisterns. Here's a pergola and a screen and a metal roof. And then it's open here. This is a fire pit and chairs. So it's very, very much a big picture. And you can see on the right all the different revisions that we did here, because every time we produce a new sheet, we will document the date and the reason for that. So we had to do quite a bit of editing to get to a point where the client was quite happy. And then after that, so when we look beyond the concept, then we get into more details. And this is a detailed planting plan where we look at woody plants. And then we have the perennials over on this side and the overall here, along with, a plant list. So the client can take that list, has the botanical name, common name, the quantity, and the size. Get a little closer look. And that's when we go and do a job, we will take this list and send it off to wholesale nurseries for pricing. So that's part of our pricing exercise. And then we added some details for their paver patio. And then there's a little structure here. So there's a side view, a front view, and then we kind of have an overall perspective. So they're going to collect rainwater into these little, they have them already. They have these liquid totes, or 250-gallon totes. And then we have a little detail on their swale and the rain garden here. So again, you don't have to include anything like this, but if you were doing a project for someone, and whether it's urban or a large acreage, in order to price it and to make it actually happen, you need to have some details to, so with this information, this whole area could be priced fairly easily. I could get a mason to price the paver install because we know the square footage and exactly what it's going to look like. We could price the structure. That's, everything we need to know is here. And there's a few little notes as well. So it is definitely all in the details. And then, of course, the plant list would help us with the installation of this component, right? So we would know the pricing, and believe it or not, when we get into planting, we end up looking at these what's called schedule size. So the pot size, and that dictates how long the plant will take us to plant. So obviously, the smaller the pot size, the easier it is going to be to plant it. And we have kind of production rates we go with. So a number 1 size pot is a lot faster to put in than a number 3. And the same with 9 centimeter, which is, we'll call that a 3.5 inch or 3. Yeah, it'd be about 3.5 inch. So yeah, those are a little bit about details on that job. I'll show you a couple of others here that I got. Yeah, this is not all of the design sheets. This is just the initial concept that we were talking about, Abner, where this is your first kick at the can. And this, it's a small acreage on the water, and we had a drone survey done. So we got all this topographic information. And if you zoom in here, you can see the contours are labeled, and our software does that. So that makes it easy. And then we've just dropped in the base plan, the water, access, and soil layers have all overlaid here. So gives our clients a good idea of what to expect. And over on the right here is Plan to collect 12,000 gallons of rainwater off of this structure. So that is a shop, and the shop roof is metal. It's beautiful surface, and we're going into a little pump chamber and pumping it into this main storage here. There we go. So that is one example there, and I got one more example I can show you. Let's see here. So this is another urban project. So this is our base plan. And we had this surveyed, so we knew where all the existing trees were. And we had a topographic survey as well. So you can see this is in metric. So these contours are, these are 1 foot contours, but in metric, it doesn't come across so nice. And of course, that's our sector. And then we go into our water. So we have these different catchment areas off the roof and existing patio. And plan is to have a nice large rain garden there. And then we did look at the micro watershed that goes up from them. You can see there's a lot of wooded area that's uphill from them. It's actually a park. And then we give them a little example of what a rain garden might look like. And a chart here on their roof collection. So, you know, the roof A right here, you know, we're getting about 65,000 liters in a year, which is, you know, let's say 25,000 gallons. So there's a lot of, between the two catchment areas, there's over 50,000 gallons a year coming off of that normally just boom right out to the street, but we're now slowing it down. And then we look at the access layer. That was a big part of this project, was tearing out an existing concrete patio and retaining walls that were rotting. They were old wood retaining walls, and placing some concrete unit pavers, an Allen block wall, and some plantings in here, and then plantings above the wall. And I can show you some photos of that. And this is our soil layer. So we show turf grass or ground cover in green, and the brown is all of our planted areas. And then they want an enclosed veggie garden as well. And then we have a few notes with the front and the back. And then that is the concept right there. So once you get to that point, and that's, you know, basically where we are getting to with this course, you're creating your concept. But again, if you wanted to look at details, then, you know, this is what we ended up doing a planting plan. I'm not sure why that red dot's there. Sorry about that. We did a planting plan for the front area and the back. And often what I like to do is here we're showing tree and shrub distribution. So we can get a pretty good feel of the overall structure. And then here is our perennial distribution. Now we're really lucky. Basically our software does all this for us. If we command it to do so, it'll separate this for us. So we don't have to do too much work. It's all about making it aesthetically pleasing. And then here's the hardscape plan with the wall in the back and some details here, scope of work boundary, because the first phase was done a couple years ago, and I have some images I can show you of that. Let's see here. And then we had an enclosed vegetable garden that was on a slope. So this is where figuring all this out beforehand is really helpful. That way we know how much retaining we had to do, the materials that we were using, and you're able to price it. Here's little detail on the front. So we just finished that not too long ago, about a month ago. And that was just a small detail on the rain garden, because we ran into some challenges here. This is a section drawing of that front area. And here it is indicated where the section is. So we have this sloping land and we're having to retain in 3 places in order to get nice flat surface for the rain garden. But we hit clay at the very bottom, the last couple inches, which was too bad. So we had to put in, well, we elected to put in a bottom drain with a valve here so that during the winter it didn't turn into a pond. And then this was just a little add-on for a spa area that they wanted. So we had to add this amount of, we had to add these pavers and the screen around the outer edge of it. And just for fun, I'll just show you a couple of, might not mean a lot, the context here, but this was their back area when we first started. So it was all those wood timbers were rotting, lots of carpenter ants, but they have a beautiful backdrop and just a bunch of images. So the front was not a lot going on there. And we'll get to some work here. The demo, I should find that. The demolition on the back of the property was brutal. It was really tricky. Let me see here. So you can see we had to remove the concrete that was back there. But not only that, the concrete went under the footing. It was just a nightmare. So we couldn't break all this concrete up beyond this line. So we had to get someone to come in and cut a line for us. And then pavers were just concrete unit pavers went up to this border. And this is the beginning of the wall. And of course, behind the wall, you got drainage. So it's, kind of some of the ugly early parts of the job. And the drainage is vital. All this stuff is show you a few after images here. Well, this is after without any plantings. So we were happy we got there. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like a lot of my photos are not here. So this is kind of, it was planted in the spring and this would be the fall. So things are looking pretty good. Their clients are using it quite a bit. And it's kind of a combination of, it's edible, medicinal, and ornamental, and it's all got to be deer resistant. Hence having the enclosed veggie garden there. So that was the back. And then we just did the front here. We put in some retaining. Okay. And this is a good thing to point out too. With a job like this where we're having to, sorry about that. I gotta turn that off. This is the sort of project that I cringe with when we come in and we've got this turf area, and this is where all the soil life is. You know, how do we prep this without destroying everything? Well, we ended up stripping the turf, placing this blasted rock in here, and then we backfilled with a bunch of that old turf and flipped it upside down, and it primarily went at the base of the rocks here. So we reused it, and we haven't had any, you know, we never have the grass come up after when you flip it over like that, but that keeps all that life within the soil there, because you can see here we're just ripping out everything that is good about the landscape. Let's see here. See if I've got any. Yeah, that's a good story right here. So we installed, well, the masons installed for us all this hardscape in the fall, and then this was, I think, December 23rd. We get a call. Hey, there's all this water, and we're like, what? You know, having to go out on our holidays to see what's happening. And what happened was the mason who we worked with for at least 2 decades, one of his helpers made a mistake with the drainage. So the drainage did not function, and the water just was running like crazy below it. So understandably, the clients were a little bit concerned about this, but the mason came back and fixed it all up. And yeah, it was ugly. That's my wife, Angela. But this is what he had to do. He had to rip it all up and change sleeves, and, you know, a lot of extra work. That's our little veggie item here. I don't know if I have a finished image of the front there. Yeah, so that was during demo. So that was brutal. There we go. We're getting a little closer. We had planted this upper area, which is now completely full. It's just done really well. And this is our rain garden that you can't see. There you go. You can see it now. We're just starting to plant it. There's some Cranberry Maritima we're having for dinner. Yeah, that's the rain garden. That's a little more of it planted. And you can see what we do. We have an inlet here, and we have an inlet over here. And we have an emergency overflow, as well as a regular overflow. So if we get crazy amount of water, you know, that's the main thing here, is to give it a way to leave the site. Yeah, and that has changed dramatically. We mulched that. But you can see as you go through here, we had all the irrigation roughed in, and there is sort of a logical step to construction. You know, the preparation, the infrastructure, topsoil, planting, and whatever. So, yeah. So that's about it for that. Yeah, so I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions at all. I know it's in some ways, going through a permaculture design course, you get to the end of it and it feels like, you know, really a beginning for you. And it's definitely a journey. I've been on, you know, my landscape journey since oh gosh, I think it's 38 years, and I'm still learning stuff every day. And that's the wonderful thing about it, you know, and all the opportunities that come your way change. You know, we just had a person called the other day with a 75-acre farm they want us to design for them. And, you know, that would never have happened in my early part of my career, but now that we're, you know, really starting to dial into what we want to do, we're getting away from these urban installations and designs. We're going to be focused more on larger picture stuff. So, but yeah, I'm sure you feel that this is just the beginning in a lot of ways. And the, you know, if you continue on as designing for people, you know, I'm sure you'll have a great experience, and there'll probably be a few that aren't so great, but it's all learning along the way. And we've had some, you know, painful lessons, but it's all good. It's really helped shape the way we do business today. And yeah, it's you know, pretty much impossible to like the Matrix, get a program uploaded and know it all. So yeah, so I don't know if anybody has anything they want to say, or we're getting near the top of the hour here. But
I mean, thank you so much for all that you've every week, the lessons you give, and like going through your concept plans and stuff. It's been super helpful, and I've learned a ton. So I really
oh, that's
appreciate
great.
your time and your comments.
Yeah, no problem, Jennifer. I really enjoy doing this class, and actually the last couple months, I haven't done any work, any design work or any installation work because of some of the events that have been going on with my family. And but I have been keeping up with the OSU, and it's been a lot of fun. And I really enjoy the Q&A portion of it. And I'm in another course right now, where I'm learning the agrarian platform, farm design. I've been doing that for a couple of years, and that's one of the best parts of that course is the Q&A, where you can actually get specific questions answered and share what you're doing and get feedback. So thank you very much for the kind words, Jennifer. That's very nice of you. And just going forward too, when we hit sort of October, November, another instructor, Javin Bernakovich, and myself have been toying with the idea of offering some level of mentorship for people that are going from the course into their own business. So we may circulate an email about that, and probably have an introductory meeting just to see if there's some interest there. But you might want to keep your eyes open for that if it's something that appeals to you. That's something I did not have. I had mentors when I was training, but as soon as I went off into my own business, I never had one. And that would have been very helpful. Of course, it was before the age of, you know, there was no internet when I first started. Well, there was. It was just very, very, very basic. Certainly wouldn't take a course on it, but there's no online platforms that I was aware of. So it could be helpful for people. And yeah, we're just going to sort of see if that's something that folks are interested in. I think there is quite a bit of interest, but again, that'll be the fall when we look at that. And so if you want, we can certainly, well, we'll circulate a note to everybody at that time. So yeah. Well, thank you again. And Abner, thank you for joining us.
So I had one question about
sure.
you mentioned a farm design course. Is that through OSU or is that something else?
No, it's through, if you go search regrarian.org, that's what it is it's Darren Doherty's platform, we'll call it. It's a design protocol that he's developed and uses, and it's quite amazing. I've known of it for, oh gosh, quite a few years. And we've implemented it in, you know, small ways within our designs. And then a couple of years ago, I joined their online training program. So I've been there a couple of years now, and it's amazing. It's like a Facebook interface. It's a workplace, but it's all about farm training or farm design and implementation. And most of the people in the course are farmers from Australia, South America, the US, Europe. Odd time we get one from Canada, but that's an amazing program. I've really enjoyed that. And for me, that's sort of the pinnacle of design, is designing land so that it can provide food as well as a livelihood for someone. So that's where the big risk is on that one. You could design something that might make sense in some ways, but if it's not working for a client monetarily, then you're missing something out of it. But that's part of his protocol. I believe there's 11 different layers in his system, and economy is one of them. So, and it's near the end. But even just reading up on it, Abner, I think you'd be quite interested in their approach, because it's permaculture-like, and he is a permaculture designer originally, and he did some teachings with that, but he has always dealt with larger land masses and thought, there must be a better way. That's quite amazing. So I can't recommend that one enough, for sure. If you're interested in larger design, that's certainly something to look at. And he's also got a handbook he's in the middle of producing. I think he's got layer number 6 now. So that would be a fantastic publication to get. You can buy the PDF versions of each chapter right now. And very, very interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. So yeah, so hopefully that helps you out there, Abner. And if there are no other questions today, I guess we'll call it a day. And thank you again for taking the time to be a part of the meeting today. All right. So thank you again. I'll look forward to seeing your final designs next week, and take care.